This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Bugs crashing your pack's party? Whether they've got paws or sneakers, your pack deserves a home that's protected from pests. That's where Wondercide comes in. Plant-powered protection made with steam-distilled natural essential oils that actually work. It kills and repels fleas, ticks, mosquitoes, and ants without questionable ingredients or overpowering smells. Safe to use around kids and pets when used as directed, lab-proven to work fast, and proudly made in the USA. We offer sprays for pets, people, homes, and yards. Plus, spot-on treatments, collars, and even shampoos. Whatever your pack needs, we've got it covered. Founded by a pet parent looking for a better way to protect her dog Luna, Wondercide's now protected over 21 million lives and counting. You might have even seen us on Shark Tank. Go to Wondercide.com and use code WONDER20 for 20% off your first order. That's WONDER20 at Wondercide.com. Wondercide. Protect your pack with plant-powered Wondercide today.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning in to the program. It's Monday, September the 15th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams. He's produced the program. Let's get the week off to a flying start. That can only happen with your participation. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So, a quick touchdown on the Women's World Cup of Rugby. Number 2 ranked Canada. Absolutely comprehensive demolishing of the Aussies, who were world number 8 in the quarterfinal, off to New Zealand for a matchup in the semis. But they played a super game of rugby on Saturday. How about those Blue Jays? All right, so an interesting one. There's nothing that really squashes the momentum of the other team like a double play. On this date, 1995, Ozzie Smith set the record with 1,554 double plays. That remains still second all time, just behind Omar Vizquel. All right, and Roger Federer announced his retirement on this date in 2022. And a quick one on the local scene. This is probably a very good idea. We hear some of the downside, the dark side stories regarding sports and the unsafe environments it can indeed present. So the government is partnering up with Sport NL. It's a new free course for junior high and high school students, and it's all about promoting safe sporting environments. So it's going to be called the Safe Sport and Education course. Must be completed by all student athletes grades 7 through 12. You have to do a course completion certificate, sign a contract in order to participate in any of the team activities. Probably a very good idea, and hopefully an effective one. So here we go, the election. We'll go through the formalities of the Premier visiting Government House and going, dissolving the legislature. We're already well into the campaign mode, right? So let's set the stage and set the agenda for the political parties, regardless of the party we're talking about, with your call. We can all focus in on what we think are the most important things, but it's kind of difficult for me to speak for you about what's most important to you. I think in the big scheme of things regarding the impact on the entire province, no question, the Upper Churchill Memorandum of Understanding is absolutely front and centre. And yes, we can talk about healthcare and of course the cost of living and housing and everything else under the sun, but you help me guide that conversation. One suggestion that I get all the time when we talk about cost of living is home heating. So, regardless of who you're going to vote for, we all have to eat, so consequently we all have to go to the grocery store or some sort of retail outlet to get some food. There's not much in the way of levers provincial governments can pull on that front, and I'm speaking to all parties. I don't know what they do there, but once again, we all have to heat our homes. Now, people use different sources, whether it be electric or oil or propane or wood stove or whatever the case may be. And the province can't remove the entirety of the HST off of home heating fuels, even though it sounds like a good suggestion. We talk about the necessities of life. Here comes the winter. Beautiful fall day today, but it's getting a little bit crispy in the evening. So is that something that a political party would really curry a lot of favour with the electorate? Yes, it could come across as pandering, but no question, it would be easing the burden on the pocketbook. Your thoughts? You want to talk about anything inside the world of this election? We're happy to take it on today. All right. Wildfires. So the voices from CBN are getting really quite loud and concerned on a variety of fronts. The clean-up and how and where to rebuild, and some potential for assistance from the federal government and the provincial government and all the rest of it. And we absolutely should talk about it. But almost every single person I hear from that area is talking about the arson investigations that apparently are ongoing, and we certainly hope so, because if it can be proven that someone or some group are responsible for igniting a fire that burnt for almost a month, of the entire month of August, we call the Kingston Fire, of course impacted many communities, be interesting to know where we are. And I don't expect to get updates every day from the RCMP, but let's hope that they are doing everything possible to investigate this in a comprehensive fashion, because if it was set on purpose, then that is a huge issue. Of course it is. All right, so we now know, it was announced late last week, about the compensation one-time honorarium for volunteer firefighters and the ground search and rescue crews. One time of $500. That's for anyone who was fighting the fires at Conception Bay North, Paddy's Pond, Holywood, Martin Lake. All right. There's also a one-time honorarium for local fire departments and ground search and rescue teams with the volunteers who responded to the fire. So plenty of fire departments saw some of their equipment damaged, whether it be nozzles and other gear, as a result of interacting with the fire. Then we know that there was a select number of volunteer fire departments were able to avail of $100,000 worth of funding for the new wildland coveralls. Also some recognition for towns. Okay. In addition to the honorariums, the province is also going to provide $1,000 to towns and local service districts to help them administer the honorariums. Another $5,000 goes to the Search and Rescue Association to support distribution of funds. So, specific focusing on the towns of Small Point, Broad Cove, Blackhead, Adams Cove, $30,000 special assistance. That's on top of the money that's already announced, so that's up now to $60,000. $500 compensation for the volunteer firefighters and the search and rescue crews. It kind of sounded a little bit low to me, given the fact we know full well many of these firefighters and search crews, they were taking time away from their work, whether they were missing work unpaid or had to gobble up their vacation time, whatever the case may be. But if you want to talk about the wildfire situation and the consequences, let's do it. All right, let's keep going. Been asked many times about the loan, a repayable loan announcement last week from the province to Brea Renewables, and that sum is $25 million. So, it remains to be seen whether or not they're going to be able to establish or re-establish markets enough to see the ability to repay the loan over whatever designated term. But also in some of the emails regarding Brea and questions about the loan are reference to the infamous 5 cents a litre. So some of the emails, I think, conflate the two things. When it came to Come By Chance being kept in warm idle to hopefully bring in some suitors to buy it, the province actually put cash on the barrelhead, almost $17 million to keep it in said warm idle. So that 5 cents is not for Brea. 5 cents is for the importation and distribution of fuels because, of course, we no longer refine any here. And I believe the company that takes that is Silver Peak, a former owner at Come By Chance, but the 5 cents has nothing to do with Brea. They were able to consider purchasing and ultimately did purchase Come By Chance because of the $17 million the province put forward to keep it in warm idle. So there you go. Also, looking for some feedback from the folks up the Southern Shore regarding the proposal regarding an LNG hub out from Muse Energy. There's an interesting story here, and of course, there's just going to be a matter of opinions about long-term viability and whether or not there's a market for and all the rest of it. Now, Muse are saying that part of their decision to proceed is because of the Prime Minister's Bill C-5, the fast-tracking for nation-building projects. So, I'm not so sure. There was an announcement back in 2022 about LNG in this province off the Grand Banks. It was the they were going to transport from the Grant Banks into Placentia Bay. That never went ahead. Here's one thing I do have a question, though. So the Energy Minister, Steve Crocker, says this proposal is partly the result of the province's natural gas assessment, and it might be. We're talking trillions of cubic feet. But of course, for Muse Energy or any of the offshore operators aren't going to proceed until there's a royalty regime. So where are we in creating that royalty regime? Because a business model can only be fully understood when they know where all the expenses lie, which would include, of course, a royalty. Your thoughts? Let's take it on. All right. Oh, and sticking with the oil and gas business, I see Tony Wakeham in the news saying that the fact that the Beta Nord project was not on the initial released list of 5 major nation-building projects, as they call them, as some sort of snub. My question, not only for Mr. Wakeham, but also for the Premier and anyone else's, if we're talking Beta Nord with the federal government, with the Prime Minister, what exactly is the ask? Because that's important. It's not just do you support, because that just offers an opportunity for the flimsy answer of, yes, I support. But it's real consequential. What are we asking for? Not to say that Mr. Wakeham is wrong. Beta Nord is going to be possibly one of the last offshore developments here. So whether or not it happens will have an impact. Regardless of your position, environmentally speaking or economically speaking, what is the ask that we would put in front of the federal government? And of course, yes, the Upper Churchill, not on the list either. Neither is the fixed link, but we can indeed talk about both. All right, what's this scribble? Oh, let's get into education for a second. We do know that the province's K-12 system needs to be modernized, needs some sort of transformation. We're not hitting the mark. We are simply not. So you might get tired of me talking about all of the big headline issues inside the province of schools, but even if we just look at academic outcomes, the trend is nowhere near where we need to be. All the contributing factors can indeed be with class size and composition and the curriculum and violence and chronic absenteeism and all the rest of it. But the Education Accord was going to be, I guess it still is, an extremely important roadmap. Now the problem becomes, apparently, now we talked about it a little bit on Friday, but I'd only seen the news story a few minutes before we went live to air. So they've gone through it. And now they found that there's some 15 out of close to 450 citations are reported to be fictional, fake. And yes, when the Minister, Bernie Davis, is asked, that's a very small percentage-wise, but I'm not so sure how relevant that reference is to how small it is, what small percentage of the overall some 450 citations. It's problematic. Human nature lends its hand to this one. When people hear this story, even if the Minister, the Premier, the co-chairs say that it does not damage the credibility of the report, in many people's minds it will. Whether or not that's fair, it will. So where to from here? So I guess they continue to work towards ensuring that it was only said 15 that have been identified. And what happens if there's more? And apologies have been offered. But how do we take the rest of the report? Because this is important stuff. That's one thing. I have no reason to believe any of this is malicious. But then there's reference to whether or not artificial intelligence plays a role here. And we've been told it's too foolish to talk about, but is it? Because unless there's some reason offered as to how this happened, people are going to think that. There's been other major reports that have been released in the last number of months that have indeed seen the implications of artificial intelligence and bogus claims, fictional citations, documents that don't exist. One said document, actually I believe it was a film, was actually stated in the University of Victoria as an example of what is a fake citation. So I'm not going to dismiss in full the Education Accord and all of the rest of the entire body of the document and the work that went into it. But we can't pretend that when this story is unveiled, that it doesn't have some real-life implication as to how people will think about it. And that is extremely unfortunate because we need this work to begin. We're way beyond in education. We just are. So people will point to the pandemic and learning loss and all. We didn't do a very good job, I don't think, there in really having a careful examination of the concept of learning loss like they did in other provinces and adjusted curriculum accordingly. But the trends in academic outcomes, you can go all the way back to 2003. We're just simply headed in the wrong direction. And that is not good. Doesn't matter if you have anyone belong to you in school. It has a direct impact on the way the province will function into the future. So you want to take it on, we can do it. And back to Parliament today. So it's the first time for the Prime Minister and Conservative Party of Canada leader Pierre Poilievre to be in the House of Commons at the same time. And then we'll get into the priorities. Look, I mean, they're going to talk about some of the issues regarding relationship with the provinces. We'll get into Build Canada Homes here now in a second. But the priorities also have to include, the Prime Minister will say it's all about action. The unfortunate reality is there were so many pieces of legislation that died on the floor as a result of prorogation. So regardless of the bill, if it didn't make its way through the Senate and eventual royal assent, no matter where it was, what stage it was in, it was dead. It had to be revisited upon the reopening of Parliament. So there's Border Bill. Bill C2, that's got to go back to the drawing board, right back to the beginning. And there's lots of concerns inside of that when we talk about what immigration advocates think about it and all the rest, but everything has to go right back to the beginning, and we'll see just how functional or dysfunctional this minority parliament is. Whether we like it or not, there will be some sway in the hands of the 22 seats held by the Bloc Québécois. Now, I think it's a reasonable assertion to say, I question whether or not my federal tax dollars should be subsidizing a party whose lone goal is to look out for Quebec and only Quebec. And even furthering conversation regarding separation, but they're going to hold some of the power here. So we'll see. And of course, the next big piece of business has to be tabling a budget, which generally done in the spring. It's going to be sometime next month. And of course, it's a vote that will see whether or not the government will fall. It's a confidence vote. So there's a lot to talk about on that front, and we should absolutely do it. One of the big things, of course, housing. Right across the country, it's a major league problem. Now, whether this, what people refer to as an additional layer of bureaucracy, is helpful or not, there's $13 billion earmarked for the new agency called Build Canada Homes. We now know who the CEO would be. A Toronto City Councillor, Anna Bayo, is the CEO of that operation. They're talking about building 4,000 modular homes. And there's 6 sites in the country that have been selected. And this is to be built on federal land. Ottawa, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Toronto, Longueuil in Quebec, and Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. All right. Municipalities are going to have to play an active role here, right? Because one of the log jams at the end is at the municipal level. So how this is going to work and whether or not it's aspirational and or manageable, I guess we'll all find out in short order. But one of the key issues here is going to be the ability to build these modular homes as close as humanly possible to the sites where they'll rest. Can you imagine if we've got to see homes that are built a couple of provinces over, find their way under federal land? If they were built in, let's pick one. If they're built in Edmonton, they're going to find their way into Portage la Prairie. I mean, that additional layer of cost is going to be huge. So we'll see where that goes. But if you want to talk about anything on that front, let's do exactly that. Okay. Look, and we talked about the temporary foreign worker program. Some of the numbers being thrown around are completely misleading. I know this is an American story. But inevitably, the intertwined economies, political discourse, social concerns and conversations, whether or not it happens in the United States, it finds its way into the hearts and the minds and the discourse of Canadians. It's inevitable. It's right there in front of us, and some of it's overwhelming. This past weekend is proof in the pudding that social media is a failed experiment. I mean, the sewer that is Twitter over the weekend was remarkable. And this is about the murder of podcaster and conservative influencer Charlie Kirk. I'm not going to get anywhere into Mr. Kirk when anyone thinks of him and his contribution to society or whatever, however you'd like to phrase it. But we've gone from trying to condemn political violence to a complete bloodbath between quote-unquote both sides as to who owns or who lays claim to the suspect. And still just remains a suspect. I mean, before there was even anyone apprehended, people were laying claim, one side or the other, that's your boy, that's the radical left, that's this or that. We don't know. There's so much yet to be fully understood here. So the temperature of people calling for civil war, maybe, just maybe, he could put your cosplay civil war on hold until we figure some of these things out. It's too important. What do we know? We're told that he confessed to his father, and his father turned him in. He's not cooperating, but other people that have been interviewed are. One of them is said roommate. So before we even knew who was going to be apprehended, we were told that it was a trans person. Turns out that's not true. And now all of a sudden, that has in relationship with a person transitioning from male to female. We've been told they're roommates. You know, there's dribs and drabs of people saying, well, I saw him kiss. There's a lot we don't know, including his motivation. We do know there's a man dead, and we do know that it has caused enormous seismic ripples across the United States and into Canada. But then some of the other things that we hear, like indoctrinated in school. Attended the University of Utah Valley for one semester pre-engineering. He's been in a technical school learning to be an electrician for the past 3 years. I'm not so sure there's a whole lot of Franz Fanon and liberal indoctrination in the technical school. So where does he get radicalized? Online. Right? I mean, isn't that the case? And then it's the us versus them. It's becoming unbelievably dangerous. And this hyper bizarre focusing on the trans community, I mean, when the battle was lost about same-sex marriage, there had to be another small group, percentage-wise, of the population that people could punch down on. And in this case, it's trans, which is wild. So let's find out what's going on here. How about that for an idea? And then it's even some of the comments. Like the governor of Utah, a guy named Spencer Cox, and this is directly from him. For the last 33 hours, I had been praying for this person who murdered Charlie Kirk that drove in from another state or was from another country. Because that's not who we are, but he was one of us. Culture war nonsense. Just hoping that it was an immigrant. What a wild thing to say. In addition to that, can you imagine whether or not anyone in this country or province would put up with, for instance, and I'll just pluck a couple out of thin air. If Premier Hogan was giving us blow-by-blow update of the investigation into Tony Humby, or if the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, was going in front of the microphones to give us updates of the ongoing investigation into the two alleged terrorists arrested there a few months ago in Upper Canada. Would we put up with it? No, because that's not what we are supposed to be doing here. The politicians have just put themselves in this for their own purpose, politically speaking. Can you imagine if we had Justin Trudeau giving us updates of ongoing criminal investigations and providing details as flimsy as they are and planting seeds that cannot be either proven or disproven before they actually know what's going on? It's wild. It's absolutely wild. So this indoctrinated in university for a one term in a highly conservative state, one of the most conservative states in the country. And regardless of his family upbringing and all those things, some of the things we know. But a lot of the big questions that are yet to be answered, boy, oh boy. Quick to judgment is just human nature, and it always has been. But for political leaders especially, maybe just cool your jets. Maybe, just maybe, take a step back here. Until we know, all you're doing is fanning the flames of an already dangerously close to tinderbox country. They're heading down a very dark path there. As Canadians, and this is not being, I'm not pontificating, I am built with tons of flaws, characteristics, shortcomings. This country is not perfect. We have lots of issues, economically speaking. We have plenty of concerns on the societal side. But that kind of stuff is making it worse, isn't it? Maybe just see what we can find out through legitimate, verifiable sources versus bloggers and the rest of them who are. And we can talk about Kirk and the way it's being handled, but boy, oh man, we're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line, follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show to kick off the week. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin this morning on line number 4. Nick, you're on the air.
Hey, Patty. I appreciate you having me on there.
Happy to do it.
I had a issue with my Airbnb. Crown Lands has given me 30 days to remove my Airbnb, or I'm going to get a $1,000 fine plus $25 a day after the 30 days if I don't have it removed. So,
what's the reason for having to remove it, though? Let's start with that.
It's because it's on a beach in Champneys West. It's right in front of my in-laws, and it's on a beach within the 15 meters of the high tide mark. It's about 30 feet from the in-laws' property, and Crown Lands has given me 30 days to remove it, or I'm going to get a $1,000 fine. There's no environmental impact. I have a composting toilet. I got the gray water goes into a tub and is composed of properly. I'm just very disheartened at the way the government is treating me. I feel I'm being singled out because there's hundreds of these all over Newfoundland, and I took the cost me about $25,000 to build it, and a lot of my savings. Now, I know I'm in the wrong for what I did. I'll tell you why now I'm in the wrong. Because I applied for a permit to get this notice of the permit to occupy the land. I paid them $170. Everything was fine. I didn't post it in the Gazette because it was an extra $60. There is no municipal government in Champneys West, so I thought I would be fine. I talked to some other locals who have sort of the same setup as me, and they never, there was no permit. They never had no permits, so I thought I'd be fine. Champneys West is a beautiful little community. Everyone does their own thing, so I thought I'd be fine. But turns out I'm not. And like I said, I appreciate what you're doing because called NTV and they said there's no story there. Well, probably because I'm just an ordinary Newfoundlander, and not an immigrant.
Well, I don't know. Well, for me, it's an interesting tale because, the technical issue that you did not register with the Gazette, that's going to be a hard one to get around, right? I mean,
yes.
That one is tricky. But even when we talk about, look, here's the story for me, and it, includes your story, but it also includes who has jurisdictional authority in these types of situations, because it's tricky. If you're talking about 15 feet of the high tide mark, right? Is that the reference you made?
50 feet, yeah.
Oh, 50, because 15.
Yeah, it's 15 meters, 50 feet, yeah.
Okay. There's a mixed bag of jurisdictional authority here between the province, the feds, territorial governments, and municipalities, right? So in this one, absolutely the province does have jurisdiction over what is most of the salt water, what they call the foreshore, and most of the fresh water. Municipalities only have issues like bylaws for public use or things related to safety. So this falls into the province's actual sweet spot of authority here. So did they hang their hat in full and only on the not registered in the Gazette?
Yes and no. I had a conservation officer, supervisor in Claremont, told me on the phone that this cannot happen. Crown Lands will not let an Airbnb of any kind on the beach within the high tide mark. Even though there's, like I said, there's hundreds all over Newfoundland. She said, yep. I said, well, because this is sort of a thing where it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to make it right. It's not like I'll pay whatever I have to pay to get the proper permits in place. I thought it would be fine because it's adding beauty to the community. Everyone loves it. 5-star ratings on Airbnb. The pictures of the place that are taken every day all across, Newfoundland, is on Facebook, different platforms. People absolutely love the little place that I built. People stay there, said it's been one of the greatest experiences of their whole trip to Newfoundland. It comes down to I'm not going to move it. I'm going to fight it to the bitter end. I will take the $1,000 fine. I don't want to because, it's money my family can use. But I'm going to fight this to the better end. And right now I have Craig Party, which is our MHA, and Lloyd Parrott. He's not our MHA here, but he's a really good politician. Two of them are working on it, but right now I have 20 days to figure out what I'm doing, or the fines are coming. And It could be jail time. It says right here on the paper. I got a removal notice. It could be jail time. They could knock it down and charge and give me the bill for knocking it down. Meanwhile, all my money is gone. The officers, the conservation officers that brought the removal notice, two of them, great guys, they were really upset that they had to do it to a guy with a young family. They really couldn't believe it that what they had to do, to a guy, and it was they wanted to give me an extra 2-3 months to get things in order, and it came right down from their supervisor that nope, we gotta bite this in the butt now and get this guy, serve him the notice immediately. So it's very disheartening, and Craig and Lloyd is working on it, but with the elections going on, I don't know if they really have the time to fight for just a small guy like myself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if there's an opportunity to retrace your steps and go back to the start line and get this done right without having to go down all of these threats of fines and jail time. Of course, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think you're going to jail. So anyway, keep me in the loop with this, will you, Nick?
And, the fishing stages now are on the beach was once Newfoundland's, main source of income with the fishermen before the moratorium. And now these fishing stages are being replaced with these little Airbnbs, tourists that are bringing in money into Newfoundland. The government has pretty much, Newfoundland is in shambles, and healthcare, roads, and these little Airbnbs. It's only 12 by 14, just a small little footprint, and they're making me move it.
It's,
I can't believe it.
No, it's a strange tale, and I'm sorry to hear it's happening to you. But regardless of whether or not you get a whole lot of action from the politicians you mentioned who are working on it on your behalf, keep me in the loop, though, Nick. I'll be curious to see where this goes.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Paddy.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's get a break in here. When we come back, of course, there's been some letters signed by folks in complete opposition to the Upper Churchill Memorandum of Understanding. And last week they we'll call a group of 9. Business leaders came out and signed in favor of supporting it. One such signatory is Peter Woodward. He's in the queue, and then you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2 and say good morning to Peter Woodward, one of the group of 9 that signed a letter last week in favor of the Upper Churchill Memorandum of Understanding and joins us on line number 2. Good morning, Peter. You're on the air.
Morning, Patty. Thanks for taking my call.
Happy to take your call. Before we get into why you support this, do you have any layer of concern with the resignation of Michael Wilson? Because one of the top lines quotes from him says, "The independence of the panel became impaired, and I no longer believe the panel's reports would meet the public's expectations and need for independent analysis supported by a full and frank commentary." Does that give you any reason for pause?
No, it doesn't.
Why not?
I think that Michael Wilson and the group that proposed that this is not a good deal, and our group are all, focused on the same thing. We want what's best for Newfoundland and Labrador. I think that the difference between our group and their group is that they severely underestimate Hydro-Quebec's ability to replace the Churchill with power from within Quebec, either wind or nuclear or natural gas. And, that's what gives our group the biggest fear is that this deal goes south and we wait, they run us out till 2041 at $20 million a year. We'll have given up $17 billion in revenue. And, they'll have found an alternative source of power. And there are lots of alternative sources of power out there right now. While we may think that Churchill is the be-all and end-all, I can assure you that there are others that are looking at nuclear, there are others that are looking at wind, and there are others that are looking at natural gas, and they all could replace Churchill Falls.
Let's talk about that, because if you hear from Michael Sabia, now, I've conceded this many times. There's a reason why Andrew Fury and then Minister Parsons and others came back saying this is a great deal. Same reason why Legault, Michael Sabia said the same thing when they went home, because no one's going to come home and say, well, we blew it, we got fleeced. But when Michael Sabia talks about the next most expensive, or pardon me, the next least expensive option to replace the deal that he just signed was way above what we're selling power to Hydro-Quebec. So in essence, he's basically saying, look, we could have done X, Y, and Z, but this is so much better.
Well, I don't question that Michael Sabia is trying to sell it to the people in Quebec. But at the end of the day, I'll ask you this. Ontario Hydro this week is a part of the first 5 projects that the federal government have developed, and they're going with small modular reactors, and they're going to produce about 1,200 megawatts with reactors at Darlington. Why aren't they interested in buying Churchill Falls power? They're going ahead. The same thing with Saskatchewan. Even New Brunswick is looking at going nuclear. And they've just approved 3 new nuclear plants in Illinois and another one in Alaska. The technology that's taking off with these small modular reactors could displace Churchill Falls. We could end up being stranded with the power. And they'll say, once the reactors are built, I severely doubt that they'll be shutting them down.
There's some other concerns too. People talk about price elasticity and what happens when and if the market changes. I know, and I've had to say many times, one of the big concerns with the 69 contract is that there was no escalation clause, or escalator, if people prefer, but there is in this one. Does it go far enough to capture whether or not the markets change dramatically? Because we're talking about decades-long contract to actually ensure that we all use our fair share of the pie.
Patty, my understanding is we'll get an average of $1 billion a year till 2041, and after 2041, it'll escalate up to $7 billion a year. I mean, you look at our debt, the provincial debt. We have about $19.7 billion worth of debt. If we applied all of the money that we currently will get just till 2041, forget about 2071. If we applied all of the money to that debt, we'd retire most of the debt. We'd reduce our interest costs by $1 billion a year, and we'd be able to spend that $1 billion a year on health care and education and things like that. So, people that are saying, well, this is a fixed price contract, I don't know where they're getting it from. But, I've talked to a number of people in the utility business, and, we'll be getting 9 cents a kilowatt hour when we move into 2041 and beyond. And my understanding is that when you look at, I talked to a guy in the utility business a while ago that has a business down in Arizona. They're buying solar for 3 cents. So, when you look at prices and things like that, a lot of it's market related. The one thing that this deal has that the old deal didn't have, or the 2 things it has, it does escalate. It takes us all the way from $20 million a year to $7 billion a year. And it also has a fairness clause in it. So if the markets do go crazy, we can reopen it with the fairness clause. And we've never had that in the past deal.
What about control? And I'm just trying to pick up on some of the concerns I've heard voiced in other corners. Is control, whether it be at Gull Island and some of the risks associated with transmission projects, but Gull and control is something that just about everyone who's opposed has pointed a finger to. Any concerns there, Peter?
The deal specifically says that we will maintain our 65% control of CFLCO, and we'll also have control of the river. All of those things have been thought about. We've done some bad things in the past, and hopefully we've learned from our mistakes. And from what I see with this deal, we've looked at the bad things we've done in the past, the mistakes that we've made, and we've corrected them in this deal. Hopefully we've corrected them all.
By control, I was more referencing the fact that it's completely up to Hydro-Quebec as to whether or not and to when Gull Island would proceed. Because I wasn't in the room, but
that's not true. They have 15 years. If they don't do it within 15 years, then the deal is off. We walk away. We can do whatever we want with Gull Island in 15 years from now.
Well, they actually pay us $1.5 billion if they don't proceed. That's something, though, I guess we should put out there.
Exactly. They don't get the money back. So, and They just finished in 2022, they finished the La Romaine hydro deal. It took them 14 years to build it. So, that's why they're at us today. Don't kid yourself. Hydro-Quebec, they produce 7 times the amount of hydroelectricity we do. They have 68 hydroelectric stations, have 23 reservoirs. These are not little boys down the block. They know what they're doing. And they're at us today because it's going to take them 15 years to develop an alternative if they don't get a deal now. That's why they're here today.
What about term? Another concern being voiced in different corners, there's no opportunity for renegotiation if a lot of things change. And that's one thing for me, regardless of what people think about this, is there are some things, and they might seem mythical and hypothetical, but they're possible. Things like, what about if the federal government gets involved, financially speaking, to support Hydro-Quebec in the province of Quebec on transmission lines? Because that kind of changes the who gets what out of this deal. There's also I can go back to John Diefenbaker and talk about this east-west energy corridor, but what happens if that becomes a thing? Because that would have been the ultimate access to market that we've never had. It was one of the justifications for Muskrat. So should this be part of the ongoing negotiations?
How many times have we been to court looking for freedom of access to the thing? And we've lost every court case. 7. And, this is like the guy saying, well, you're not allowed to cross my backyard. And us saying, well, we're going to cross your backyard regardless. And then we find that the guy has 78 federal seats and we only have 7. I mean, reality has to set in sometime.
Last one, I'll let you go on, and then you can offer whatever you like, Peter. So, people bemoan the type of oversight that this is not getting. They talk about the handcuffs on the panel, even if there are companies like JP Morgan Chase and Power Advisory who have also been brought in to offer some technical expertise, and some big law firms. It's the whole, the thought process of industrial strategy going in here. What could have been done with the power for our own concerns? Now, I know there's a quadrupling of the Labrador recall block that brings it to about 1,200 megawatts, which is not insignificant. But the foresight given as to how we approached this negotiation, people talk about industrial strategy in Labrador. Do you think that was part of it? And if so, you must know more than I do.
Listen, I don't know what will happen to Labrador West without access to this power. If we go to 2041 and the mines in Labrador don't have access to the power, we have a big problem. We don't even have enough access to power today to hook up a 200 amp service. I mean, the PUB has frozen all hookups in Labrador because we're at max now. If we don't get access that this deal is going to give us, we're going to be in big trouble anyway. And 17 years is a long time for those mining companies to wait and hope that they're going to get power. They want the power now. In places like Goose Bay and Lab City, if you want to hook up a small business with 400 amp service, you got to go through pure hell to get the PUB to even approve it. So we're already at that point, and there's 1,500 megawatts in this deal for power for Labrador, for mining, and for whatever else we can generate. That 1,500 megawatts is equivalent to 75% of what the whole province uses.
Fair enough. Last one, I'll let you go. So the oversight is what it is today, insofar as the political decision has been made. When we get towards this definitive agreements, however many there will be by next April, do you think there at that point should be some sort of additional oversight or public disclosure and additional debate before we simply make a political decision and sign? Because who knows what they're going to look like?
Listen, Patty, I think everything has to be transparent, and I think everything will be transparent. But I just can't believe, the big thing is, do you really, there's a lot of people in this province want Quebec Hydro to suffer for what they've done for us. And, I understand that. We've had a rough go for the last 50 years. My first time I was ever on the site at Gull Island was 1975. Since then, we've had 4 or 5 kicks at the can trying to get this thing going, and nothing has ever happened. Now, I don't want to go another 50 years, and I'm afraid what's going to happen is if Hydro-Quebec finds an alternative to the Upper Churchill and to Gull Island, we will not have a project. We'll be stranded here. We'll be stuck with a project, and we won't have a customer.
Peter, I appreciate you making time for the program. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, Paddy, thanks very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye. Peter Rudder is one of the Group of 9. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Say good morning to a candidate running in Ward 2 here in the city of St. John's. That's Blair Traynor. Blair, you're on the air.
Hey, Paddy, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hold on. Hey, Paddy, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, perfect. So I'm just actually out canvassing in Sebastian Court there by Choices for Youth, and I have some of your about sports and with girls volleyball and boys volleyball, high school volleyball for 5 years, and also about the From Youth development. That's where the Traynor family's from, down in Perk Irwin. My dad owned Weathershore Windows, the window company that he had plant out in Trapassi. He's been out canvassing with me 4 days, and he's 77, and he's got more energy than me. But I'm not going to go on a big rant. I just want to talk about a few things, and I'd like a few questions from you, if you don't mind. So when I first got involved with housing and homelessness, it was about 2010. It was a group of young child and youth care workers, and we slept on the streets for 5 days, raising awareness for youth housing and homelessness, for the need of supportive housing. And all we had was, we had no cell phones. All we had was a pillow, a sleeping bag, and a toothbrush. That's all we had. And we raised, in our 6 years of running, we raised about $80,000 for housing in St. John's, for youth housing. And our primary funder was Choices for Youth, which is where I'm standing outside right now. And at the time, they offered a really great service, and they still do. However, like many nonprofits in the city, they kind of turn into empires and kind of lose focus of the grassroots issues and such. And I do want to talk about, but that's pretty much it for me, and I'd love a few questions from you, Paddy.
I don't know what you mean by that. You'd love some questions from me. Questions about what?
Well, I don't know about housing and homelessness. You can shoot. You can ask any questions, or if you don't mind, I can just keep going.
Okay. Where do you start? So, what's the number one concern regarding the housing crisis here in the city? Where do you start to try to fast track some of these proposals? Because we know we've got Build Canada Homes from the federal government. We know the province has some authority, but the municipality holds a lot of the strings at the end of the road. Where do we start?
Well, I tell you. We start with NIMBY. Ward 2 has a huge heart, and we allow a lot in our backyard. And it can't just be a Ward 2 issue. However, that seems what it's like. There's 47 vacant housing units right now in St. John's that need to be renovated. And other wards simply can't just keep turning down proposals. And the proposals that go in, can't wait 3 years for these proposals to be approved. So if we have housing available and we have business people wanting to build housing, how come we're waiting so long to approve these permits? And how come other wards are turning down these proposals for apartment buildings, supportive housing, and affordable housing? That's the big question for me. I just don't understand how come Ward 2 has to take on all the pressure. And I'm in Sebastian Court right now, and I've spoken to a few young people, and just the Choice for Youth basketball court. The courts are in shambles. So how are you supposed to build housing when the communities aren't built up? So we need to start taking care of our communities. And I was talking to another fella, Oren, in Sebastian Court, and he was telling me there's no youth programming down here for the kids. Like, where's the kids supposed to play? Where are they supposed to go? So it's a complex issue that we can make very simple with some care and some love. That's basically it for me. Yeah.
Fair enough. Look, people just continually tell me that, people who don't want support, we can't help them, let's just forget about them. It comes with enormous cost, no matter what angle you take at it. And so I think when I hear that offering, it just pretty much screams that people don't know what they're talking about on that front. Anything else you want to add this morning while we have you, Blair, before we go to the news?
Well, when it comes to addictions, I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. Addictions is like a really hard thing. And, it's just a really hard thing. And, we need the proper services in place. We need people coming together as a community, not just housing them in shelters. Where I live, there's 4 shelters in 1 square kilometers. There's 2 to 3 senior shelters in St. John's. Like, we're supposed to be taking care of our seniors, not placing them in shelters. We're managing homelessness, but we're not ending it. And we need to start more partnerships with provincial, municipal, federal, business, and just community leaders. Like, there's the mayor of Balm Street, there's the mayor of Livingstone Street. So we need all players at the court, and we need to pass the ball. We got to share the ball, and we got to go around, and we got to take our 3-pointers and go in and go for a slam dunk every now and then. So that's it for me, Patty. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm going to go pick up my 77-year-old dad, and we're going to finish the last house today after canvassing the entire Ward 2.
Good man, you. Say hello to your dad for me. Thanks for the call.
I will. All right, thanks. Take care.
Blair. You too, buddy. Blair Traynor, running for council position in Ward number 2. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 3, say good morning to the NDP candidate running in the voting district of Mount Sio. That's Laurabelle Emba. Laurabelle, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. So I just wanted to call in this morning just to talk a little bit about me and the fact that I'm running in the upcoming provincial election. This is my first time running in provincial politics. It's my first time running in any politics. But after the last few years of advocacy and working in community, I decided to throw my hat in the ring this time.
Why? Where are you going to start? Like, what's a priority for you in Mount Sio?
In Mount Sio, for me, the real priority is affordability, and more so in general for provincial politics is the fact that the government no longer seems to be connected with the people who have elected people into positions anymore. So for the last few years, for decades actually, it's been the same back and forth between the Liberals and the PCs, and we haven't really seen any improvements for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. And so I decided to throw my hat in the ring, and more specifically to throw my hat in within the NDP, because I felt that they were most closely related and connected to on the ground with people in community, especially within Mount Sio.
When you say that the successive governments, because we have gone back and forth, red and blue, we're not connected, what does that mean?
So I feel like for the last few years, a lot of people who've been elected, once they get in, they get to this level where they're no longer really talking to their constituents. They are 1 or 2 MHAs who happen to sit in there who are closely connected. But one of the questions I got while I've been on the doors canvassing is from people like, if we elect you, how often are we actually going to see you and hear from you as an MHA? And so that was really surprising to me as someone who's worked in the constituency office at a point in time, to be like, how, as an MHA and someone who should be on the ground with your community, are they not seeing and hearing from you regularly? And so that kind of continues to build on the fact that if you're continuing to make policies, but your constituents don't see and hear from you, are you actually advocating, creating policies that serve the constituents?
Let's pick an issue where you think the disconnect is real.
We can look at the education system, and not even to go into the education accord and the report that just came out. But if we look at something like the $10 a day childcare, which is a wonderful policy that came in federally and that we're seeing it enacted provincially, and we heard the Liberal government talk about spots that recently opened up. Those spots aren't actually accessible to people. So we talk about, if we look at what ECEs are facing, so we're saying we have, I think they said they opened up around a couple hundred spots, but those spots aren't accessible to people because we don't have ECEs to staff them. And then when you look at ECEs who have to be in the sector, talking about the working conditions that they're experiencing, they aren't equitable enough to keep ECEs in the sectors. So we have these spots that are said to be open but aren't available because there isn't staff to staff those positions within childcare centers. So then we don't have a successful $10 a day childcare program because parents can't access them, but we're saying that we have things working for a system.
So $10 is good for affordability. Accessibility is quite another. And when we get the announcements, we don't get the net gain. We simply get the amount of new spaces that have been created. But when the province has gone back to the drawing board regarding remuneration for early childhood educators, so we're still calling for benefits like sick leave and the like. So where are we coming up short insofar as trying to recruit and, more importantly, to retain ECEs?
So we're calling for benefits, but we're not actually seeing them implemented. ECEs, so I happen to work at a time for a union, which was supporting ECEs, where the sick days aren't there. And these are like the frontline staff in order to create a sustainable economic system in the first place. If people can't work because they have children who need childcare, we have an economy that doesn't have a labor shortage. So we're seeing that they're saying that these policies are out there, but if you look at the pay grid, which recently came out, great, but we don't have the sick days built in. We have ECs without a pension plan. They just got health benefits. So we're not seeing the system actually support the early childhood educators that are needed to fill those roles.
Laura Bell, fair enough. We got to get it right there. Your brain is 90% developed before you hit the age of 5, so a lot of work needs to happen inside the world of early childhood education. Would you like to offer anything else this morning?
So, yeah, I would just like to let people know that there are options. So it's not just the same two-party system. The NDP is ready to fight. And I'm someone who's worked outside of the system advocating for people for the entire time that I've been in this province. So I'm excited to be able to voice the concerns of the people of Mount Sion at the House of Assemblies. I
wish you good luck on the hustings. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you so much, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. That's Laura Bell Imba, running for the NDP in Mount Sion. Let's go to line number 2. Ches Crosby, you're on the air.
Thank you, Patty, very kindly.
No problem.
I am calling in about the Churchill River deal, which your listeners will be hearing much more about in the coming weeks because, as many of us know, the Premier has said that it's going to be the chief issue in the election. And I'm not calling in to tell anyone what to believe about it. I happen to wear a team jersey. It's a PC team jersey. And listeners are, appropriately skeptical about listening to advice from people with party affiliations. And that's why I'm going to say, for those who feel confused about this rather complicated matter, and it is complicated, pay attention to, this is my suggestion now, pay attention to independence, or the theme of independence. And one of the reasons I say that is that one of the members of the supposedly independent oversight panel, chaired by Dennis Brown, has resigned, as most of us know by now. His name is Mike Wilson. And he's made an assessment. He hasn't spelled out exactly why he resigned, although at this point I think we can put it together why. But he has made an assessment in a document called It's All About the Price, as to what the major problem with the deal is. And in his assessment, we're not getting the value for the resource. So this is someone who was put on the independent panel to give oversight and report to Cabinet. He's made his assessment. He resigned because he explained his independence and that of the panel was impaired. And his critique of the project is that Newfoundland and Labrador is not getting value for the project. I'll just pause there because there's a couple other things to say.
Okay. And so, look, value and price and cost are 3 different things. Well, I guess 2 different things. Price and cost can be definitive. Value, a bit more of a floating target. My question on that front, and of course, I wasn't in the room for any of these negotiations. I don't know where compromise was met. I don't know what might have been left on the table. But what are you using for a measure of value? And I don't mean to be, sneaky with that question, but I hear a lot of concern about value, and I'd like to know specifically what every individual who says value actually means by that. So is it a percentage left on the table? Is it about price elasticity? Is it about do we get more if and when the market changes? So what do you mean by when you say value, Ches?
Sure. Well, value ultimately has to be accounted for. One of the major factors is price. And so some of us are probably confused. What is the price that Newfoundland Labrador is getting for this power from the Upper Churchill, from the other projects to be worked on and built? Some say it's 2.5 cents. Some say it's as much as 5.9 cents. Some say it's somewhere in the middle. But what Mr. Wilson is saying, and I guess he's in a position to know, is none of those numbers represent true value to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. I don't have the kind of expertise to come up with numbers myself and crunch them. Others do. Mr. Wilson does. And I'm prepared to go with his assessment that we're not getting fair value. And when you're assessing value, price has to be a major factor.
Yeah, and the pathway is to 5.9 cents. That's right there in the schedule, and that number is in 2024 dollars, which I think is part of, trying to look into the future. Because if you don't make that reference to 2024 dollars, then we can indeed be, on the sidelines watching Hydro-Quebec thrive like they have since 1969. So here's something that complicates it a little bit further for me, is because there's two big projects in the one MOU. So expansion at the Upper Churchill, the quadrupling of the Labrador recall block, transmission required to flow that power, is a big project in and of itself. And then if you take Gull and decision making there and transmission project there, it complicates it to the point where I've done everything I can. I've read all I can. I've read the MOU 10 times. It really does become difficult for me to know exactly how to answer that value question, because they came to the table looking for Gull. We went to the table looking for redress on price. They came to the table with authority over Gull. We went to the table to expand the Upper Churchill. So that makes it tricky for me. How about you?
You're reflecting a criticism other people have made. For example, Rolly Martin, who is longest-serving director on Hydro over the years, made the point that bundling all of this together this way makes it impossible to assess whether you're getting proper value for any component of the overall deal. It's all bundled together and therefore opaque or difficult to penetrate for people who want to assess what we're getting out of it. There's another point I want to make here. Ed Hollett brought out a piece. He's the blogger, Substacker, who writes on this frequently. It was this morning. And what he brought to, the attention of people and now your listeners is that back in July, when the Independent Oversight Committee reported, there was a change in the mandate of the committee so that they no longer reported to Cabinet, which has been the assumption all along in the original direction. But now they're doing their quarterly reporting to the legislature and the public. What Hollett is saying is this removes the source of independent advice, which was supposed to be the Oversight Committee, the Independent Oversight Committee. Cabinet is no longer getting that source of independent advice because the terms of what the committee is supposed to be doing have now changed as of July. And when I went online myself this morning, I did a direct search. I went to your website and I pressed the link that you have in the story from July. That's VOCM. I also asked AI to try and find this. Guess what? You can't find that quarterly report. Now, maybe I'm doing something wrong. I'm not technologically adept, but I can't find it having done those few things, which is very strange. So the point is that now Cabinet, which is supposed to be independent advice, is not getting independent advice. We, and that's the 9 people that I was a member of, who wrote to the chair of the board of directors of Hydro, we've ascertained now that Hydro's board is not getting independent advice, truly independent advice to them as a board with duties to get that independent advice. And the Cabinet itself is not. And it is now clear that Dennis Mahoney is both negotiating the detailed deal under the principles of the MOU, the detailed agreements, and he's the gatekeeper to Cabinet because he's the clerk and the secretary to Cabinet. And he is in a position to strongly influence, if not determine, the critique, if any, the independent panel is able to deliver to anybody because he's the gatekeeper to Cabinet.
But Dennis Brown's not negotiating with Hydro-Quebec or the province of Quebec?
I may have misspoken. Dennis Mahoney is still, as far as anyone knows, on the negotiating team of 3. Perhaps I misspoke. Dennis Mahoney, and he is the clerk of the Executive Council and Secretary to Cabinet. And as I just said, the website seems to have come down where these changes were made that Mr. Hollett is alluding to. So, again, I come back to my point. People, when they try to assess for themselves the difficult question of what makes sense about this deal, is it a great deal? Is it a terrible deal? they need to pay regard to who seems to be truly independent in the whole process. I'm not asking anyone to take my advice as to whether it's great or terrible. Take the advice of people like Mr. Wilson.
Last one about the reports. The last quarterly report was released on the 21st of July.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a quarterly report. My understanding is by the end of this month. And I'll be curious to see what that includes. Sorry?
No kidding.
Chess, anything else before I have to take a break here?
No, but the Premier has said this is the issue of the election, so whether we feel a little confused about it or not, like we're watching a ball go back and forth over the nets as one team hits it this way, the other team hits it that way, it is extremely important to all our lives and to the future of the province and its economic viability and prosperity. So do pay attention to it. And your best bet is to look to people whose advice on all this you can regard as being independent advice.
Appreciate the time, Chess. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's get a break and don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, Bill Broderick. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Welcome to the show. I have a news release from you and your group, and you're displeased. And this is a reducing the ferry capacity. What exactly is happening on St. Brendan's?
Yeah, well, I guess, Patty, this is probably the straw that broke the camel's back. We've talked before about other issues, especially the oil issue last fall, and that's still an ongoing issue with us, and you'll see it in the release. But right now, we have a replacement ferry, which we need, and no objection there. Vessel needs its regular, its maintenance, and it's going to be down for, they're suggesting, probably 4 months down to Christmas. And in the meantime, they brought in a vessel that's able to serve the island. That's not a problem. It's just that the vessel is not as big as the one that's there, doesn't have the deck capacity. And the one that's there is hardly sufficient. Sometimes you have to have extra runs to do it. And with this one, you almost know that it's inevitable that you're not going to be able to do it. And just putting on a run when there's extra traffic, that's fine, a scattered time on a weekend or something. But on a regular basis, when you know you can't handle the traffic, people got to line up for 14 hours to get aboard the boat. That's not, and you can put a trip in there to fix it. It doesn't cost any extra money because the crew are paid to stick an extra trip in there in the morning at 10:30, and it does it. Everybody is saying that. Everyone who lives here knows the workings of the ferry. And there's no reason not to do it. I mean, it's not the extra money it costs is a pittance when you think about it, because if the vessel is not running, it's running on generator power, so it's still using fuel. So but it's just that this government just seems to be, totally insensitive. Nobody will come and talk to the people and see what the concerns are. We haven't had a top-level civil servant or a cabinet minister on this island in the 4 years that we've been on council. The council's here now. We talked to our MHA, and he's advocating for us every day, Mr. Parrott, but he's in the opposition, and it's just as frustrated with this as we are. And so, at some point, I don't want to be on your show this morning talking about this. That's the last place I want to be. But because I know I'll get all the negative stuff about you should resettle and you should do this and you should do that, But that doesn't solve our problem today, right? And but that's what this gets to. But people get frustrated, and our town is saying, we've got to be making noise. Nobody is listening to us, right?
Mayor Broderick, so the vessel that normally services the run is the Grey Sparks, right?
That's correct, yes.
Was that running at capacity all the time? Or do we have any idea what the capacity numbers look like?
Well, see, that's where the government goes back to statistics, Patty, and that's the word that I can't take. Statistics. It's people, it's residents, it's service to people that we should be talking about. There's no ferry service in the country, in the world, that's at full capacity all the time. We have our peaks and valleys, and we understand that. We know that when we put a service in place. But that's what they throw at you all the time. And I mean, an official from the department was talking to me on Friday at about 11 o'clock saying, she hasn't left anybody. I know she's left people because people have gone up and can't get on and go back. They didn't stay in Penny's Cove waiting for the ferry to come back. They left because they couldn't get on. They couldn't make that trip that day. But that particular day, 2 hours later, the vessel went at 1 o'clock and left 3 vehicles, including the garbage truck, who's from off the island, who came in here, picked up the garbage, can't get back out. That's what happened on Friday. So that's happening all the time. But if you're looking for something that operates at full capacity, you're never going to get that, right?
I was just wondering what the numbers look like. This wasn't a question loaded for one reason or another. I was just curious if we had some numbers. In addition to the ferry issue, so when we talk about say, for instance, the Grace Sparks goes down, or when the Legionnaire or the Veteran goes down, it's whether or not there's a swing vessel out there that can accommodate or replace the size and capacity of one vessel or another. So what ferry do you have now? Is it like the Astron or something?
No. We have a vessel called the Sound of Islay that's been around for a long time.
Yes,
and
it has
been used, and it can serve our service. We're not complaining. We're not looking for a ferry the size of the Grace Sparks or bigger. We're not looking for that. We're fine with the boat. Just use the damn thing. That's what people say to us. Use it. Bring the people across, right?
Fair enough. If you don't mind, I'd like to move on to the oil business, because here comes the winter. You were given a brief reprieve by North Atlantic, but here we are still with no long-term arrangement in place. So what exactly is going on with the delivery of home heating oils?
Well, we haven't had any delivery since May, and as you said, we had a reprieve last winter. Andrew Parsons was able to work out something with North Atlantic to get them to come back. We're still frustrated how come that North Atlantic pulled away when they're still here with the lucrative government contract. But the officials of the department are still there. I haven't been able to get a cabinet minister to talk to me. Andrew Parsons talked to me, as I told you before, pretty well on a weekly basis, well, either through a text or a phone call or something. But since he left, I haven't been able to get a cabinet minister to talk to us on it. But the officials in the department is supposedly working on it, but we're now into September. We're soon getting into the point when people are saying, when am I going to get my tank filled? Once you get into October, you're starting in that season. And we're no closer to a solution to this than we were this time last year. And I had the patience. I talked to you several times on this last fall, and I said, this will get fixed. I'm confident this will get fixed. Well, my confidence is waning. I can't, this government it's almost hoping the problem will go away. It's not going away. It's still there.
Yeah, and it won't be long before people are in need of turning up the heat, because, as much as a beautiful fall day today, cooler evenings and cold nights are right around the corner.
That's right, and the same thing with our healthcare system. That's deteriorated to the point that now, if you want the least in healthcare, now you've got to get off this island to do it, and that again puts extra capacity issues on your ferry, because the nurse that was here retired, they didn't or couldn't or whatever find a replacement, and when the nurse is no longer there, the doctor will no longer come in. So that all of that puts a strain on. But what I'm saying, nobody is paying attention to the community and trying to do something. Come in, talk to the people, try to find solutions. You can't get solutions if you don't talk about them. And we're talking, but we're talking into the wind because nobody is listening and nobody is getting anything. We just got to know this. With this government. Just no. That's what we get. We can't do this. We can't do that. And for no good reason. I mean, and we hear there's lots of other communities that get in trouble and need help, and what the residents here see is that they get help, but they say, well, we're not making noise enough. But when we make noise, then you get the negative stuff. Like I'm picking up this morning on Facebook, because this was on Facebook this morning, and the people say, well, you shouldn't be there or whatever, right? But the fact of the matter is, the people are here. They've been here for hundreds of years, and the few of us that's left are still here, and we'd like to be treated as residents, as citizens of Newfoundland, not somehow disrespected. That's what we refer to it here, as we're disrespected by this government.
Mayor Broderick, I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Paddy.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. That's Bill Broderick. He's the mayor of St. Brendan's. Let's take a break. I'm not sure exactly where we're going, but Chris has got an issue out in Stephenville. We're going to talk about a rally, speak with the president of Cup W at Local 126, disability savings, whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. welcome back. Oh, and Mike McDonald. Let's go to line number 2. Second word to the president of Cup W Local 126. That's Mike McDonald. Mike, you're on the air.
Hey, Paddy, how you doing this morning?
Great today. How about you?
Not too bad, all things considering. We decided today that we would come out and rally at Tom Osborne's office on Topsail Road. It's, I guess it's a situation now where today is the first day of the sitting in the House of Commons, and postal workers across our province and across the country are going to join together to meet their members of Parliament at their offices and essentially remind our MPs that postal workers are still without a contract, and our employer really needs to get serious about negotiating ratifiable agreements for our membership. So we just wanted to make sure the public was aware our overtime ban is over. We've started a commercial flyer ban. And again, today we're visiting the MP's offices to let them know that we're still without a contract, and it's been 22 months of negotiating and talking, and this is a point where we need to start escalating some activities in order to make sure our employer starts getting serious about ratify or negotiating ratifiable collective agreements for our members.
Mike, if the company Canada Post lost what I think is $407 million in the second quarter, why ban delivering flyers, whether it be governments, business organizations, and others that fill up those bags? So if that was a revenue side generator, why ban it when there's so much money left on the table potentially? And if there is money left on the table, how much is that quarterly, even just in your neck of the woods?
I always find it interesting as a postal worker that it seems the Canada Post gets it out into the media whenever they lose money, but we never heard anything about making money in the first quarter this year. And that's something I would like to see change, is that people actually get an actual true picture of what's going on at Canada Post with their finances. It's almost at a point where we need to ask the CRA whether or not there should be an open audit of Canada Post and the way that they spend money.
Well, I spoke about it. I talked about first quarter and about where they spent the money. So, yeah.
Yep, you did, and I appreciate that, Patty, because a lot of people, if they read the annual financial reports, they would believe in the doom and gloom that Canada Post is running out of money and that it's a dying entity. But in actual fact, when the CEO that's in place right now, Doug Edinger, when he showed up, we were in a healthy situation. He actually openly went into the public with a plan that he was going to spend billions of dollars over a certain amount of years, 4 or 5 years, in order to upgrade the infrastructure and the system and our equipment and our vehicles. And then all of a sudden, all of those investments turn around and are clocked as losses, when we know that that overhead is not something that's going to continue into the future. So, when you come with a plan to spend the entire bank account and then cry foul and say you have no money at the end of that spending spree, it's harder for the workers at Canada Post to accept that when we know the reality that we're working in.
Remind people of the gap between the employer and the 55,000 represented by CUPW. I kind of have a vague recollection of the numbers, but I don't want to be inaccurate. So where is the gap? Exactly what is it?
And by gap, how do you mean?
Wage offerings in particular.
The wage offerings? Yeah, so they came and offered us around 13%, and we had been asking for around 19%. Now, the 19% that we asked for was simply about treading water and making sure that we, as workers, were able to keep up with inflation. So the number we provided, really, inflation over the same time period was just over around 16%. So it's not like we're asking for a big windfall. We're really just asking to make sure that, like I said, that we continue to tread water like most workers.
Fair enough. Anything you'd like to add while we have you this morning, Mike?
Just the fact that this is a situation now where I think the government and our employer needs to recognize that 2/3 of the membership in both of our urban and rural bargaining units, they voted in the federal government's forced vote, and they chose to reject Canada Post offers. So we're a couple months, we're 3 weeks out from the point where CUPW presented Canada Post with a new global offer, and those proposals, they would have kept Canada Post in a sustainable situation and would have been able to maintain that stability for the Crown Corporation well into the future.
Appreciate the time, Mike. Thanks for doing. Oh, sorry, I thought you were done. Apologies.
No. I was just going to say, instead of accepting the vote that the membership provided to the corporation and the federal government, the corporation has decided again to walk away from the table. And we know that the best negotiated agreements happen at a table. We just need to be at the table in order for that to happen. So we're asking MPs and the members of Parliament today to tell Canada Post that it's time to start negotiating with its workers so that we can get ratifiable collective agreements and sustainability for our workers, for the public, and for the corporation.
Appreciate the time, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the time, Paddy. Have
Pleasure.
a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Mike McDonald, President of Cup W Local 126. Is Tom going to be there talking the disabilities conversation? Okay, let's take a break. We'll figure out what we're talking about right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Krista, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty. Thank you for having me on your show this morning.
Just 1 second, Chris. I'm going to put you on hold. Dave will get us a better, clear line. Let's go to line number 5. Al, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How you doing, boy?
Best kind. How about you?
Not too bad, buddy. Not too bad. I listen to your show all the time. It's been a while now, Pat, but since I spoke to you, I think it was about the harbour, or it could have been about the Community Council of St. Bride's. I think the last time when they were going to put out these places, but they said for to get good drinking water in St. Bride's, what they were going to do, the council, was put a road to the dam and fill the dam with big, huge boulder rocks for the improved clean drinking water. So anyway, we got a hold, me and a couple more, got a hold of people over water works, and we got that quashed. Rick Harvey is the name, by the way. He's over, he's a great guy. I already spoke to 1, 2, 3, 5 different people this morning. And this new guy now, Chris Stampy's overseeing it. But apparently there's new elections for the council coming up the 2nd of October back. And they got the old council, what they went and done there, maybe somewhere around the month. I haven't got the right date, but a month ago, lo and behold, they went and they dug 4 wells. But they weren't supposed, what was said, they weren't supposed to turn no money from the $350,000 until they had a public meeting with the people of the community before they spend any money. But that meeting was like 10 years, I'm almost in 2015. That meeting never happened. So they went ahead and they dug the wells anyway. So, like, the story keeps getting worse. But I think this is the straw that broke the camel's back. Because one well was over by the fire hall. And if you go down 100 feet, maybe 120, I'm not 100%, you're into salt water. It's right over a river, and you're down no distance. I doubt it if you'll be 100 feet, you're down into salt water. That's no good. That's condemned. And I already talked to one council member. He showed me far she know, I'm not going to say man or woman, that the 2 of the wells out of the 4 are already condemned. They're no good. And I asked her, why did you do it? I said, the new council's going in. They have plans to put in 3 wells for St. Bride's. There's a massive pile of people. Paddy got their own wells here, artesian wells. I talked to a man yesterday up in the Young's Lane, it's called, where he put one of the wells. And he said, I got my own. And he said, I can't see why all the piles of money is coming out to St. Bride's with no meeting. He holds no meetings with the public to let them know. But so I asked the council, why did you put him? The wells, where you put him? She said, we had no say. Should be honest with you. Now, she's a council member. He's a council member. I'm not going to say no more. But they couldn't say, either he nor she couldn't say why they put him. And I said, well, he'll come up with the decision where he went. She said a drone came out from St. John's. Now, Paddy boy, I tell you, you know what? A dying horse, if she was down on her last leg, you'd jump up when you'd hear that. A drone came out from St. John's and found, lo and behold, out of all the 3 kilometres roughly from one end of the St. Bride's to the other, and it drives down into St. Bride's, you go down the valley, and the lowest place that they could get in St. Bride's for the first 2 wells was, lo and behold, the drone found land belonged to the brother of the mayor, who's already sold all his property in St. Bride's and moved to town. And a little piece of land, man, oh man, you'd have a job to find it. Like, there's no man 84 had to show it to me. It's so small. It's big enough for a house and put a little shed on. And that's what it is. So now, that's where the drone found that. Now, how in the name of God can we swallow that? Like I said, the horse would jump up if you don't die in horse death. And then the drone flew over St. Bride's out of all the crown land up on top of the beautiful red rocks on each end of St. Bride's, crystal clear water. All they wanted was they would have had 3 artesian wells, a tank on the south side, the north side, and the southeast side. That's the way. Because on the west, the salt water is out of St. Bride's. You go west, you go to the ocean. You come up to the south, you get perfect red rocks drilled down to get water. On the south side, you get it. On the southeast side, you get massive hills. And lo and behold, what do you think? Like, this is a laugh. This is unreal. It gets worse every year. The rocks we stop. They put out a paper saying they'll build a new road to the dam and put boulders, put rocks down the dam, which is going to improve the quality of the water. Like, tell that to a dead horse and he kick you, because then when the rocks get dirty, the machine will have to go back up, and we knows what machine to pay, and take the rocks back out and get paid to do it again. Like, there's a never-ending game of a cycle of the same old garbage. But we had a wonderful bunch of people, our young people. That's what you need. Young people was willing to go and put 3 wells, one on each hill, and each coming into the community in St. Bride's, the first one, and then come through and come to the south side, and then go over to the up on the southeast side and put another one on 3, and would be perfect water. And here yet, lo and behold, the drone found the mayor's property. Like, she put the 2 wells on, one was on the mayor's property, and the other drone found the small piece of land in St. Bride's. Literally the smallest property. Now, that's what it is. I'm not lying. If you were out there, I'd show you. You say, on the name of God. And so you tell me, or the council tell me, that there was no names. There was nobody pointed that out to them. Like, and then somebody must have pointed them out to the fire hall. And then they put another one up to another place. That's already, I know that one for a fact. The first one up on the north side of St. Bride's. That's already condemned, as far as I'm hearing. The water's no good. So now, I asked him or her, how much money did it cost? We can't tell you because we don't know. Well, I said, okay, give or take. My brother got a well dug for 7,000. A lot of people got them dug for 7. Was it 10 each day? Oh, no, there was a lot more than that. Was it 15? A lot more than that, because there was a fella had to come from Nova Scotia to dig the well. So that's a month ago, and the councillors don't know. Can't tell you how much money was spent. And they never held a meeting. And Sherry Gavin Welsh is the one who supplied the money. And I was told that government, by somebody in your municipal affairs, and that's supposed to be giving a cent to the community without the holds their annual meetings. They never had one since I come home in 2015. There's somebody beaten. Paddy, are you hear me?
Yeah, it's a pretty tangledy tale to follow.
but for a drone to leave St. Bride's and find that little piece, and now they're no good. Now, okay, if his brother wants to sell that land tomorrow, what did he automatically do? The taxpayers, some of the people who are starving are getting half enough to eat and freezing to death. Some of them taxpayers getting maybe unwelfare, social assistance, whatever the poor people are at, from one end of Newfoundland to another, all over. The taxpayers is paying money and getting half enough to eat and half enough to keep them warm in the winter time. Because I know lots of seniors in St. John's gets on the bus and goes to the malls or talk to them in the village and all over to get out in the cold days in the winter time because they can't afford to keep their heat on to stay warm. And now, so lo and behold, he can sell that land, and the provincial government, taxpayers' money, drove up the price of his property. So he can sell that piece of land he bought for a house and a shed, that's not big enough for. He can sell that now to the means of the taxpayers, driving up his property. Oh yeah, I got a brand new well on my property. And then the mayor have a piece of garbage, he filled it with garbage up inside the main road, package of buckets and booms of excavators and cables and busted out black sticks with creosote in them and culverts and you name it. The mayor got it all there, and the other one went on that. And they expect us to believe that the drone found them 2 pieces of property. And I said, why didn't you put them up? Well, that's what we wanted to. And I said, why didn't you put them up on the hills? Don't know, can't answer you. But just don't go say I told you. That's all. Frightened to death to speak. I'd sooner be dead and buried in the clay, Paddy, than to be gutters enough to afraid of somebody to speak up if I was on the committee. I'd sooner be better off to be buried in the clay. I was on the Harvard earlier. I talked to you lots of times, and we got it cleaned up, Paddy. Thank God last time I talked to you, maybe that was mentioned too, but that's for 9 years now, dredging free with the Harbour St. Bride's and no smell. We cleaned up the garbage. $1,200,000 kelp trap was there for dredging every year. Well, 9 years, so we spent millions of dollars in St. Bride's now. And here the new councillors is coming in trying to get elected this time. We're going trying to do something for St. Bride's. And look what they done just a month before it went destroyed. But I will find out because I had no other choice that time. I was maybe talk to the Department of Justice and the investigator. So that's who I called, and I'm waiting for a call back from them to come out and investigate why the money is being given to the community of St. Bride's from provincial government taxpayers' money with, no, they're not letting the people know what they're doing. They just went and done, put the wells where they absolutely felt like doing. Drove up the price of the property. You know what? I'd hang my head in shame if there was me. If I had to get the taxpayers to dig a well on my property before I'd sell my property, I'd hang my head in shame, is what I do.
Al, I got to get in on it, but I appreciate your time this morning. Strange story.
Yes, sir, it is so. Okay, thanks a lot, Paddy.
No problem. All the best. Bye-bye. I mean, the whole issue regarding well waters and water conservation orders, what have you, you know, I'm still hoping to get the gentleman from the Federation of Agriculture on the show, because I think that's kind of lost in the shuffle. You know, we focus, obviously, and justifiably so, on the wildfires, the water conservation orders for that purpose. But right across Atlantic Canada, it's not just people in this province who are farmers reporting what the drought-like conditions have meant for their yield this year. So there's something to that conversation into the future. I'm not so sure the general public and or the government have fully absorbed just how bad an issue this might be. Bad enough this year, but what are the contingency plans for into the following years? Something I don't know. If you got an answer, you can let me know. All right, let's check in on the newscast. When we come back, there's a ton of time left for you. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back. Let's see if we have a better line on one. Krista, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty. How are you?
Doing okay, thanks. How about you?
Good. Thank you for taking my call this morning.
No problem.
I apologize if the line is not great. I'm in a hotel room here in Stephenville.
No worries. Well, I can hear you just fine. Go right ahead.
Okay, great. I'm calling as a concerned family member and a resident of the area. I'm from Port-au-Port. I currently live in Conception Bay South. Last few weeks, I'm probably more like a month and a half. I have several family members living in an apartment complex out here who were relaying some concerns of being kind of inundated with insects of various kinds. I had no idea to the extent of the situation at hand until I received a call from my brother-in-law, who I don't mind saying was next to having a nervous breakdown over it all, Patty. This apartment complex is riddled with cockroaches. And I didn't even know we had cockroaches in Newfoundland, Patty. I've lived in Brampton, Ontario, and I know they were there. Fortunately, I never ever saw one until I visited this apartment complex on Saturday. So fortunately enough, I have resources. I manage U-Haul on Kenmount Road. So I jumped in a U-Haul, myself and my husband. We drove out to the West Coast on Saturday. Meanwhile, prior to my arrival, I had made a phone call to the owner of this apartment building, relaying my concerns about the problem. He was fully aware of it, advised he had received several calls regarding the same concerns. He asked if I would disclose who and what apartment number. And at that time, Patty, I couldn't disclose the information as I was making an anonymous call on behalf of my brother-in-law, who has been up there in fear, as have all the residents. Been fearmongers. They've been threatened to be evicted if they speak about it. When I pulled up with the U-Haul outside, I had been approached by several older women crying, asking me begging for me to take them out of that place. And unfortunately, I'm not able to do so. So we found an apartment for my brother-in-law. The caveat to it all is that he's been a resident at this complex for 28 years. He's disabled in that he's a burn victim, don't have the resources to move. He can't pack up himself. So myself, my husband, we came out, and the caveat to it all was that he had to walk away from 28 years of his belongings. We found another apartment for him. However, he had to walk away from everything he's owned and accumulated over 28 years. And now we're told to go away. The owner had the manager on site go in, so they didn't know what unit. But I had said to the owner, I said, you and I both know that if it's in one apartment on the 6th floor, they're in throughout the whole building. Patty, while I was in the lobby waiting for the elevator, and these aren't small cockroaches. I've never seen cockroaches, but these are huge. And I'm telling you, you wouldn't have your pet in there, let alone a loved one. These people are frightened to death. Nobody's wanting to speak about it, in fear they're going to be evicted, and they have nowhere to go. More so, if they leave, they have nothing to take with them. We've been out here trying to gather items for his new apartment, and I tell you, just the mental fatigue and the just being traumatized by it all, it's not right. For a 65-year-old man who can't have family stay and just visit with him due to these issues, on top of the cockroaches, there are drain flies coming up through the drains. The whole place is crawling.
Those bloody things are everywhere. Cockroaches are not native to this province, but there's been infestations in St. John's and Mount Pearl. That much I know for sure. I mean, this is all caused by human transport, right? It's obvious. If it's something's not indigenous, it comes here across Marine Atlantic or whatever the case may be.
Sure.
And I also know someone who I know who owns a commercial building had a cockroach infestation. It proved extremely difficult to get rid of them. Extremely difficult.
They are. And Patty, I'll tell you what the controls or the measures being taken are. It was said this morning to another resident who reached out, saying that the owner said he's not making enough money off the building to take matters into, like, to have a professional company come in. These things need to be bayed. It could take months. I know from a manager for commercial business what's involved with pest control. This gentleman, the landlord who's managing the building, went into my brother-in-law's apartment with a can of Raid. This is their control measures. This is how they're trying to combat these things. Killing on site is not going to kill cockroaches. They sprayed it in his toaster, and 3 crawled out, and then they think it's fine. That's sufficient, acceptable that he used his toaster. It's unbelievable the conditions these people are living in. And I just want to bring awareness to this in hopes with the election getting called today, that this is not falling on deaf ears. This is a major issue that we are allowing our own people to live in fear that they're going to be evicted. And if the Department of Health or whomever, I'm no expert when it comes to buildings and tenants and the Landlord Acts, but I do know people have rights. And I know that if you're infested with cockroaches, it's the owner and the manager's responsibility to take control. And Patty, I know people personally who nonchalantly, indirectly told me that they're waiting to move in next month. They're not even disclosing to people coming in that there's a cockroach problem. And this person has a small baby. And this is very concerning. I have videos and I have pictures. And I'm telling you, you would not have your dog left in that place.
Yeah,
it's
so
ridiculous.
They can certainly carry things that cause allergies. They're more gross than dangerous. And, you know, the spraying Raid is a complete waste of time. I mean, there are certain, like, for instance, if you take some big American cities, New York City's here, for instance, the cockroach population there is almost 100% resistant to pesticides. I mean, you can spray Raid all day long. It's not doing anything. And cockroaches reproduce, people say like mink, way quicker than that. It's unbelievable how quickly the population can grow. And I don't even know why I know much about cockroaches. I've never even seen one. Krista, anything else you'd like to say this morning?
No, today I'm just hoping that anybody in office or anyone who has any means or any kind of control to walk in there and just get some action going. Nobody should have to live in these conditions, Patty, and it's at the expense of these people who are very vulnerable and just don't have the means or resources to move.
The only answer here is, I mean, I wouldn't hesitate to contact the Department of Health just to get some guidance, see if they have any consideration on this front. But this requires professional pest control. This is not something individuals could take on by themselves. It's just not.
No, and for people to be threatened, and I asked several people would they do an interview, and three ladies out of 5 were a little hesitant. They started crying, and I'm really concerned about the mental well-being of these people, because I can tell you, my brother-in-law is very fortunate that he has us, that we can come out and rescue him, but it's not a nice situation, and I just reaching out for anyone listening if you have loved ones there, please. It's like it's an embarrassment, of course. There's a lot of pride, but anybody with loved ones there, I would be very concerned.
I appreciate the time, Krista. Thanks for letting me know, even though it's got the hair standing up on the back of my neck.
Yes, Patty. Thank you, dear. I appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's an interesting one coming up on 3. Yeah, I mean, it's disgusting, right? And as much as I'm a 6'2", 240-pound man, I mean, a few earwigs around get me going. There's a little mailbox in the park behind my house where it's a bit of a community dog treat box. And, especially early in the morning, by the time you get Dexter out for PE these days, it's pitch black out there. So I came out of the mailbox with this little milk bone treat with 2 friggin' earwigs on it this morning. I almost hopped up on the chair. Hopped up on the fence. All right, let's get a break in. When we come back, we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 4. Say good morning to the Liberal candidate running on Mount Pearl Southlands. That's Sarah Furlong. Good morning, Sarah. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you today?
Doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing great. I wanted to give a call because I didn't get a chance to call in last week. We did have a Suicide Prevention and Awareness Week. It's actually ending today, so I thought it was a great time to call in. Last week, the Mental Health Foundation of Canada, Tina Davies with Richard's Legacy Foundation, along with the CMHA, with Honourable Pam Parsons, we met, and it was recognized that September 8th to the 15th is Suicide Prevention Awareness Week in Newfoundland and Labrador. So it was great to have that awareness raised, especially as we had 2 wonderful women, Pam Purdy, who lost her brother to suicide, along with Tina Davies, who lost her son. So they spoke on that, and it was very moving, and I was honored to be there next to them while this was signed.
Yeah, Tina was on the show last week, as a matter of fact.
Oh, okay, fabulous. And I also wanted to mention, too, after that on September the 11th, there was a Safer rally. I didn't get to stay for the rally. However, I did want to discuss the importance of mental health and addictions and, give my own thoughts on how we can better support our community.
Where would you like to start?
So I think it's really important for everyone to know that accessible resources is top of my priority. I think it's also important to recognize that we do need to look at preventative measures. I think that we could have as many nice buildings and, locations right now for people to get into rehab if that was the reality. Right now, there are so many young children and youth who are struggling. And I think that we need to look at the picture of what's going on underneath for those who are struggling with mental health and addictions, and what we can do right now to support the underlying issues. So that's something that is really near and dear to my heart, as you know. I have to say that I was really happy to hear about the education, social services, and healthcare announcement that Bernie Davis and Krista Howell put in place. So there's going to be a new central intake system. There's going to be a new 2-on-1 process, and central intake system is going to be intertwined so that the education system, healthcare, and social services will have access to all of the information in one joint location by 2026. So for me as a foster parent and mom of children who have neurodiversities, it just makes sense. I've had to navigate healthcare and then also social services and education, and there's too many cooks in the kitchen. We can't see what's going on with the file. So I think this is a first step for preventative. I think there's a lot more to be done, but I really am excited to hopefully be at the table to help make this move along for our kids, for sure.
Underlying factors, root causes, whatever people want to talk about on that front, I think is widely misunderstood. It really, truly is. Some people will point to socioeconomic issues, living in poverty, lack of education, lack of support, whatever the case may be. Where do you start when you talk about that? Because we do a lot of talking about investing after the fact. We talk about reacting when things have gone completely sideways. We don't really talk a lot about how can we reduce interactions with criminal justice and the healthcare system, what that looks like pragmatically, whether it be in school or in the community. We don't have those conversations. We talk about we got to build this many houses. That's to deal with people who are currently in a difficult life predicament, as opposed to try to put some programs and policies and supports in place that reduces this type of issue and the numbers of people therein.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to understand that as well. Like when I look at reactionary, we've been very reactionary in the last 10, 15 years since I've been doing a lot of mental health advocacy. And, I see that I think the return is between $5 and $8 on every dollar spent in preventative measures. So just to give you an idea, or the listeners an idea, so let's just say we have a child who maybe shows signs of ADHD or maybe some sort of autism in the classroom, then what can we do to get the supports right away so that they're not waiting 3, 4, 5 years? Because 3 or 4 or 5 years to a child, that's a really long time, right? Myself with my son, newly diagnosed with autism, he had supports right from kindergarten until grade 4, and then this year was the first year that they weren't going to give him anything without a diagnosis, right? So instead of only offering it to or making a priority for reactionary to those who would be considered so-and-so, troublemakers or people who are, or children who are outward destructive. There's a lot of children who are internally processing anxiety, and maybe they might not have had a great breakfast in the morning. Maybe they didn't have a good sleep the night before. Sometimes it's really easy to kind of catch those small things, like with the breakfast program and the school lunch program, to make sure they have some sort of stability. But then there's also other issues where it could be medical, it could be family dynamics going on in the household. It might be something as simple as a conflict with a friend in the classroom. And that's something that I've heard as well with my own family. So those day-to-day interactions with children, they do play a huge role in how a child feels, right? So when they come home from school, they're thinking and worrying about the next day of what's going to happen tomorrow morning when I have to go face this one or that one in the school. So definitely bring in the awareness piece and having more programs put in place. I think Bernie Davis announced last week that there's going to be a new preventative for like sexual abuse and things like that, which we used to have. I think it was called the Care Kit program when I was going to school. So I'm really glad to see that. I'd love to see more programs put in place with the RNC. I'd love to have it in every school. Building, I think it's awareness, like building relationships and understanding. And, I think we all play a role in it. It's not just educators. I think it's parents, it's neighbors, family members, friends. I think that we could all have some compassion and maybe ask questions like, how are you today? What's on your mind? Is there a barometer that we can use to kind of gauge how everyone's feeling in the classroom? But I do know from my programs that I've worked on is a good catch is perinatal. So if we that's the biggest bang for the buck. So if we catch every single pregnant person who goes into the hospital setting, if we go through all of their medical history and if we ask them questions about their family, then there's actually some really good preventative measures that we can put in place going forward. It certainly doesn't help right now for those who are struggling, but right now it's a really good way for us to get our future children and our grandchildren. And I know that it's something that Dr. Vidya Sankar has spoke about as well, and the Perinatal Alliance. So it's food for thought for sure.
I appreciate the time, Sarah. Good luck out there.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Sarah Furlong, runner for the Liberals in Mount Pearl Southlands. Let's go to line number 2. Dorothy, you're on the air.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing okay. Thank you. Anyway, I'm calling about a concern I have with the justice system, I guess. I went to court over 2 years ago. This has been an ongoing matter for about 7 years. It was in a lawyer's hand, and lawyer went. Anyway, I won the case. I got a portion of the money. They stopped paying about 2 years ago. I've been involved with judgment enforcement. No problem with staff. It's just no law. We have no justice.
What was this court settlement about?
It was about a business deal that went sour, that I didn't get paid at all. So, like I said, I went to court. I won the case. And then workers' comp got their share after I went to court. That was owed to them from the same company. And they stopped paying approximately 2 years ago. Well, I've been back and forth, just going back and forth to every bank in Grand Falls, Windsor. A couple of the banks got back to me, no account. The others didn't. So this was for garnishment, of course. Now I can't take it to small claims court. I don't know how to go back because I can't take the same matter back to court. So therefore, I got to pay a lawyer again if I'm going to get anything at all. There's no other way, no other system, no other thing I can do. There's no answers. I got off the phone this morning with the sheriff's department. One time the sheriff would do something, but that's not in the law anymore, obviously. So here I am. I'm out the money. I'm the victim, and I've already paid $10,000 to get this matter taken care of. And there's nowhere for me to turn other than to go back to a lawyer again. And I don't know what the verdict will be from that. But what I know about the justice system, we don't have one. We don't have a justice system.
Well, I assume this was a civil matter, though.
No, it's not a civil matter. It's a business matter.
Well, a business matter can be handled. So there was a crime?
Yeah. I sold equipment to another business that never paid me.
So what was the conviction? What was the crime?
Well, the crime is that you don't operate a business on somebody else's equipment.
I was just asking because if there's a criminal case and there's a charge of a specific crime, I was just wondering if there was.
No, well, I don't know what kind of a case you call it, but I mean, to me, it's business to a business. Like, I sold you the equipment and you didn't pay anything for it, and you're operated for 7 to 8 years, and I'm not getting paid, and I take it to court, pay a lawyer, and I won the case, and you stop paying, and I can't get any further than that. Like, I don't know where to go. Like, there's no answers. Other than I have to go back to a lawyer again, and this case has to get opened up under a different matter of, I don't know what I'm going to call it, or I guess the lawyer will help me with that. But, I'm not into paying out $10,000 and getting nothing in return. I mean, if that's the way the law is going to work, it's just well to give it up and say, okay, help yourself. That's it. And you go in to garnish the bank. And I mean, one bank will let you know, or let the justice system know there's no account. But I've tried all the accounts. Now, you got to operate out of a bank somewhere along the way. But I don't know where else to turn. Like I said, other than go back, pay more money to get a lawyer again to open this case up. I don't know what else to do. So I just see it as I'm a victim with nowhere to turn and paid my due diligence on through, but I can't get any answers unless I go back and I pay again. I don't know if I'll get any answers then, to be honest with you.
I don't know. So you must have been represented by a lawyer, and there must be some sort of court-mandated schedule of payments, right?
Yes, I like I said, a lawyer went to court with me, and I did win the case. But then, of course, that matter was over with that lawyer, obviously, right? Because the judge passed that I won, right? And they were supposed to be paying $2,000 a month until this amount was paid off. Well, that didn't happen. They just stopped paying about 2 years ago. And like I said, I've been flat out going back and forth, like paying like $150 some dollars every single time, and then that runs out, the time runs out on that. Then you got to go back in again and pay it again. But no matter what, there is no answers. Like, somebody needs to get over the justice system, and, you know, when a victim is left with no answers after paying their way all the way, I think it's horrible. I always knew, like, you know, if you went to court and you won a case and the judge ordered, don't you have to pay?
Yeah, you do, but there's 1,000 examples of people shirking their commitment to paying any sort of outstanding fines and or court settlements or what have you. The question then becomes, what next? And the only real answer to that question is to get a lawyer, unfortunately, and that's an expensive option. I completely understand, but that's kind of where we are with court mandated payments not being followed and what can be done next, because I'm not even sure who owes you the money or what capacity they have to pay, whether or not this is an incorporated entity or just an individual, I don't know. But I do have to get to the news, Dorothy. I'm sorry you're getting jerked around here.
Yes, sure.
Okay.
I will certainly be calling back on this matter when I deal with it.
Let me know.
I have to.
Keep me in the loop.
Thank you. I will.
Thanks, Dorothy. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
You too. Let's get to the news. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 5. Emily, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
Okay. How about you?
I'm not too bad. It's Kimberly, actually.
Oh, my apologies.
Emily. That's okay. No problem. This is regarding conflict of interest, code of conduct complaints against official members and councillors in the town of Harbour Grace. You got to bear with me a bit because I wasn't prepared for this morning, because I was actually expecting a very important promised phone call from Jerry Osmond, which I didn't get. In January, I won't go back to the whole story because it's just too much, but in January, I filed formal complaints to the town and Minister of Municipal Affairs regarding these conflict of interest code of conduct complaints. And after such time, Minister Paul Pike ordered a third-party independent investigation pertaining to the complaints to the town of Harbour Grace. In response to that order, the town themselves hired a consultant of their choice to investigate themselves. A consultant is not an investigator, and the difference really matters. That report was to be returned directly to the minister upon completion for review and direction. Instead, its handling from the consultant is nothing short of pathetic and in conflict going forward. Just a second now. So what had happened, the consultant sent out, I guess, a draft copy of the report to the town's lawyer. And in turn, the town's lawyer handed all the respondents a copy of this unredacted report. From there, it was sent back to the consultant for, I'll say, corrections. When I initially got the report myself, I read through it. There were so many flaws, hearsay, conflicts, just too much to mention, but it wasn't properly done. The process is flawed. And the process for this unbiased investigation has failed. I've been 3 weeks trying to reach individuals such as Jerry Osmond and the Minister Paul Pike at Municipal Affairs with absolutely no return calls, no messages.
just ignoring me. There's a lot of skullduggery going on in the town of Harbour Grace, and it's time for these people to step forward and let the residents know exactly what's going on here. My family have been put through so much undue hardship since 2023. Legal fees, you name it, everything. It has gone to multiple appeals. We've been to court, and every instance, it was in my favor. The town done my family wrong, and everybody is trying to cover it up. But this can't be ignored any longer. Elections are around the corner. Residents need to be made aware of exactly what transpired and how this led to where it is today. Because it's nothing short of, like I said, pathetic, skullduggery. I've been reaching out to try to gain a reporter for months and months. I've had zero luck in that. I can't understand why a reporter will not come to Harbour Grace and get this story. Is there reasons for it?
I have no idea.
Are there cover-ups? Are there, there's a lot of misled information around this town at this time, and a lot of hearsay. And this so-called report, there's actually zero evidence in it. Most of the findings that this consultant refers to, it's excused through ignorance or not knowing. They need more training, or, but it's just so,
Kimberly,
self-explanatory.
Kimberly, do me a favor.
Yep.
Can you put some of this together, like whatever documentation you have and whatever thoughts you'd like to add, and put it in the form of an email so I can try to have a better understanding of what we're actually talking about, so then I can probably try to do something about it?
Okay, I can do that. Like I said, I wasn't prepared for this morning. But, I have stacks, hundreds of statements, documents, evidence.
Well, how about this?
Every single thing.
Send me some of the key items for me to have a look at, and I will do exactly that. My email address is an easy one. It's just openline@vocm.com.
I will. In the meantime...
Kimberly, can we do that?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay, that'll be helpful to me, so I know more about what we're talking about.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Bye-bye. All right, final break of the morning. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Gabe Gregory. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Doing very well, thanks. How about you?
Good, thanks. Calling to follow up on the conversation we had last week. At that time, we were discussing more about the value of the MOU, and I'd like to discuss a couple of other points, particularly in regard to the pricing.
Sure.
In the MOU, as I understand it, there's a lot of confusion regarding the pricing in the MOU. I'm talking about the pricing going forward. And when the MOU was first discussed back in, January of this year, and late December, of course, during the Christmas period, the point was raised about, what do we do if the market changes, there's no opener in the MOU, and if real prices change, are we going to get any ability to renegotiate? And the responses to those kind of questions from hydro and government were that, well, we have these off-ramps. In 2050, there's an off-ramp for a block of power, and then in 2060, there's an off-ramp for a block of power. But those blocks of power are only very limited relative to the total energy that we're going to contract over 50 years. So as I see it, there's really no ability of significance in the MOU that if real prices for electricity double, triple, quadruple during the term of this agreement, that Newfoundland is going to get that benefit. And that's a significant, shortcoming. And people have pointed out that, the price is low in relative terms, and we don't have, a means to address that. If the market really significantly changes, as most people, including myself, would anticipate that, given the demand now that's going for electricity in North America and the transition that's about to take place in the next decades away from fossil fuels, you had to expect that real prices for energy are going to be affected by those factors. And they could, double, triple, quadruple, whatever. I mean, look at what's happened over the last 50 years. Been tremendous change, and we haven't benefited from that change. And I don't see any explanation from anybody, from hydro or government, that that's addressed in the MOU that we're about to sign when definitive agreements are concluded.
Okay, so when you say the off-ramps are limited, elaborate on that, because hydro says different. And I'm not to say either side is either right here, but I'd just like to hear you elaborate on that limitation.
Well, in the MOU, it stated that in 2050, we have first off-ramp occurs, whereby we get to basically recapture, I think it's 250 megawatts of power from the existing Churchill Falls plant, that we could then go out and attempt to market and get a higher price for that power. And if we do, succeeding in using the power for another use other than selling it to Hydro-Quebec, that's fine. That's allowed under the MOU. But if we also had to give Hydro-Quebec, I understand, the option at some agreed price in the future to pay for that 250. They have a first right of refusal, basically, on that 250 recall. Then the same thing happens again in 2060. But, I mean, the point I'm making is that, we're selling, on average around 4,000 megawatts of power over the life of this 51-year contract. And we have two opportunities to change the price, one at 2050 and one at 2060, but only for 250 megawatt blocks in each occurrence. So that's what I mean by that.
Okay, important distinction, because sometimes, look, you've looked at this carefully, you have your own perspective on it, but sometimes when we just hear the very high-level concerns, sometimes I think it's helpful if we dig in a little deeper and elaborate on so that people know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm trying to keep this, in a form that people can follow. I mean, this is a very complex document, and I've studied it and modeled it and, analyzed it in depth. But my point today is to say, these points need to be understood by the public. And our government have not informed the public about the Churchill Falls deal, in my opinion, nor have Newfoundland Hydro. I mean, they've put together an MOU, and the price is not specified, what we're going to get for the power, is not specified how that price may change. Okay? And people say, well, okay, that's not negotiated. But the point being is that the one issue on price that is agreed and established in the MOU is that the present value of the energy being sold is going to be $33.8 billion. So when they model the energy being sold over 51 years and they price it and index it as is outlined, then they're going to apply the discount rate that's specified and agreed in the MOU, and the value is going to come back to $33.8 billion at the time that this agreement is going to be made. Now, I know, of course, that, in time, to the degree that the index changes different from the assumptions that were made when it was signed, that there will be change in that value retrospectively. But, still the value is going to drive the value to Newfoundland, as I see it, the $33.8 billion, which people who've looked at this say, that's a low value given the opportunity that's here to price this and see a real change in electricity that's going to impact on it over the next 51 years. And we're not going to be able to renegotiate that. This is a fixed term contract for 51 years like the one we're in now. So there's a lot here that the people need to be informed on. I mean, how does the government expect people to go out and, vote and mark their X on this key issue they're saying is going to be the key issue of the election coming up in the next few weeks? I mean, that's impossible, isn't it?
I don't know how impossible it is, but it becomes, as every day passes, it becomes less and less likely that the fulsome understanding of this contract will be understood by, or this MOU, pardon me, will be understood by everyone who's going to have the ability to cast a vote, whenever that is. It looks like October 14th. Gabe, we're almost up against the end of the program. Would you like to say anything else before we run out of time?
Well, I'd just like to say this, Patty. I've spent a lot of time on this, and I even created a song about it. And for those that would like to be more informed and get, my perspective on it, there is a YouTube song video. You can just search under YouTube, the MOU Churchill song, or you can go on to a website I've created with a lot of information there about the MOU, where you'll probably find that, there's a lot of information if people are interested. And I know that there's a dearth of information. We're really lacking information. So I close by saying that the website is called The Old Churchill Deal and the New MOU.com.
I appreciate
your time, Patty.
I appreciate yours, and thanks for sending along that analysis last weekend.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands. And yes, we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.